Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Anchor Host. My name is Latoya, and if you are new to my channel, I am super excited to have you. Today, we are going to be doing a study into the story of Amnon and his sister Tamar. But before we get started, let's pray. Lord, the entrance of thy word gives light. I pray that as I open my mouth, I will speak with boldness and clarity. I pray that nothing will done of self. Open my heart to receive your word. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. And it came to pass after this that Absalom, the son of David, had a fair sister whose name was Tamar, and Amnon, the son of David, loved her. And when you see the passage or this verse started off with after this, after what? And to get some context into what the Bible is making reference to, this is after the event that transpired between David and Uriah and Bathsheba. And if you go to 2 Samuel 12 and reading from verse 10 to 12, it will give you some context into what this after this is referring to. Now, therefore, the sword shall never depart from thine house, because thou hast despised me, and hast taken the wife of Uriah the Hittite to be thy wife. Thus saith the Lord, behold, I will rise up evil against thee out of thine own house, and I will take thy wives before thee, before thine eyes, and give them unto thy neighbor, and he shall lie with thy wives in the sight of this sun. For thou didst it secretly, but I will do this thing before all Israel and before the sun. David, after what he did to Uriah, because initially David slept with Bathsheba, then Bathsheba was pregnant, and he was trying to pass that paternity off to Uriah. But his plan backfired. And when his plan A of passing the paternity to Uriah didn't go well, then he had to go into his plan B. And this plan B was to kill Uriah. That's why the Bible is making reference to after this, after what had transpired in the previous chapter. This is a result of what is going to take place in chapter 13. And it stated that Amnon loved Tamar, and Amnon and Tamar, their sister, but she is his half-sister. And Amnon was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin, and Amnon thought it hard for him to do anything to her. Amnon, he is the crown prince. He is next in line, according to man's tradition, to be the next king in case of David's demise. And herein, he have all these feelings for his half-sister, but he doesn't know what to do with it. And initially, what he thought was love, when we go further down into the scripture, we're going to see this was actually lust, probably infatuation that he had for his sister. And it states that, and Amnon was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister, Tamar, for she was a virgin, and Amnon thought it hard for him to do anything to her. The Bible is making reference that Amnon, he have all these feelings for his sister, and guess what? Prior, it was not illegal for a brother to marry his sister, but newsflash, in Leviticus 18 and verse 9, God put an end to that old idea or that policy, and now he have all this feeling for his sister, and he doesn't know how to go about doing it because that was prohibited in Israel. Leviticus 18 and verse 9 will shed some context into that. It said, the nakedness of thy sister, the daughter of thy father, or daughter of thy mother, whether she be born at home or born abroad, even their nakedness thou shalt not uncover. If this is your full sister, your half sister, you cannot have no marriage with that person because it's no longer prohibited and it's no longer allowed. And I'm now become to the point like he's mad, he's upset because he loves his sister and he doesn't know what approach to take because now this is would be a prohibited relationship. And he came to the point that he became lovesick for his sister. But Amnon had a friend whose name was Onadab, the son of Shimna, David's brother, and Jonadab was a very subtle man. Hearing Amnon and Jonadab, they are actually cousins because Shimna is David's brother and he is also, they have a close relationship that he is also an advisor to him. And we know that we got to be careful who we take counsel from, especially if they're not godly and in alignment with God's word. Amnon is in a predicament, and we see that the only mention of this word, or the first mention of the word subtle, was in Genesis 3 when the Bible made mention of the serpent that deceived Eve. And when you see the word subtle, that means he's cunning, he's crafty, he's wily. And Genesis 3 and verse 1 said, now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord had made. And he said unto the woman, yea, and God said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden. And we know that this word can also mean shrewd. And when the Bible make reference to the serpent, the Bible was telling us that Satan, he took on the persona of the serpent. And although the Bible doesn't explicitly say that it was Satan, when you read in Revelation 12 and verse 9, it kind of gives you, so we see that Satan have all these names as a title to him. And Revelation 12 verse 9, it states that, Revelation 12, if I can find it, Revelation 12 verse 9, it said, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceived the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. So here in the Bible is making mention that the word serpent is also a name that Satan, the devil, Lucifer, is also known by that name and title. And we know that that is not a good character trait. So when the Bible gives us that word subtle about Jonadab, it's telling us that he's shrewd, he's cunning, he is wily, he's crafty, and it kind of gives you a look into his character as a person. Verse 4, and he said unto him, why art thou being the king's son, lean from day to day? Wilt thou not tell me? And Amnon said unto him, I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. Now we see Jonadab notice that Amnon's countenance is not jovial. As the crown prince, like, you should be jovial. So he start to pry. He's probing to see what is the matter in order to advise his friend. And then all of a sudden, Amnon just blurted out, "Oh, I love my sister, my half-sister Tamar." And Jonadab, after hearing the matter, he was probably thinking to himself, I thought it was something more serious. If this is the issue, if this is your only concern, say less, I got you. And Jonadab said unto him, Lay thee down on thy bed and make thyself sick. I thought he was already sick. You see this foolish counsel Jonadab is giving to his cousin. And when thy father cometh to see thee, say unto him, I pray thee, let my sister Tamar come and give me meat, and dress the meat in my sight, that I may see it and eat it at her hand. Jonadab is like thinking to himself, like, I got this all figured out. And he gave a suggestion to Amnon. This is how we are going to fix this problem, this situation that you have. And question, what does the Bible say about seeking wise counsel? We will look at 2 verses in Proverbs 11 verse 14 and Proverbs 15:22. Proverbs 11 verse 14. We know it's good to seek wise counsel, and we are turning to Uncle Solomon, the wisest person. So here he is giving us some wisdom, some insight of what it means to seek godly counsel. Proverbs 11 verse 14. 11 verse 14. Where no counsel is, the people fall, but in the multitude of counsel there is safety. Where there is no counsel, like the fall, because you don't have anyone to give you wise counsel. But in the multitude of counsel, guess what? There is safety in counsel. That's why they said there's safety in numbers. And also Proverbs 15:22, without counsel, purposes are disappointed, but in the multitude of counselors, they are established. Here we see it's talking about multitude again. In the midst of plenty, there is wise counsel, and it's established. We see safety and established. And here is the solution that Jonadab gave Amnon. He's like, we are going to be acting. No, you're going to put your best pretend acting into place. And you are going to pretend that you are realistic. And this is probably the custom. This is the norm, that you, as the crown prince, when you're sick, the king will come to visit you. So probably this is some thing that was already established. This is things that he have seen happen. And that's why he gave that idea to Amnon. So when the king come to visit, just tell the king that you are sick, and be specific. Tell him that you want Tamar to come and take care of you. And so Amnon, he lay down and made himself sick. And when the king was come to see him, Amnon said unto the king, I pray thee, let Tamar my sister come and make me a couple of cakes in my sight, that I may eat at her hand. Then David went home to Tamar, saying, Go not to thy brother Amnon's house, and dress him meat. Herein David was not evil, thinking that there was going to be anything that transpired. He thought this was something innocent, that Amnon was trying to do. And I forgot to mention earlier about wise counsel too. We see that in 2 Samuel 16:23 that David, he had his counselor that was a very wise man, and it was Ahithophel. And the Bible makes sure it gives you like a little context into this person was. He was as a person. 2 Samuel 16 verse 23. 2 Samuel 16 verse 23. And the counsel of Ahithophel, which he counseled in those days, was as if a man had inquired at the oracle of God. So was all the counsel of Ahithophel, both with David and with Absalom. Ahithophel was able to give wise counsel both to David and to his father, both to David and to his son Absalom, after he had turned from David. And because David know how wise those counsel of Ahithophel are, when Ahithophel switched side, we see that in 2 Samuel 15 and verse 31, that David prayed, and one told David, saying, Ahithophel is among the conspirator with Absalom. And David said, O Lord, I pray thee, turn the counsel of Ahithophel into foolishness. Ahithophel was a good counselor, but David prayed that God, because his counsel was so good, and know that he become a enemy of David, he would become a dangerous enemy because of his wise counsel. And that is why David had prayed that God will turn his counsel into foolishness. And David, when he sent Tamar to Amnon's house, he wasn't thinking anything of this matter. He wasn't thinking that Amnon have any sinister plot, or when he tried to fulfill this request. And so Tamar went to her brother's Amnon's house, and he was laid down, and she took flour and kneaded it, and made cakes in his side, and did bake the cake. Herein we see that even though Tamar, she is a princess, she is able to know her way in the kitchen and be able to bake and do certain things. And she took a pan and poured them out before him, but he refused to eat. And Amnon said, have out all men from me. And they went, and every man from him. Amnon is trying to carry out his plan. And we see that in verse 9, this is where things get interesting. So after Tamar did all the cooking or all the baking, and she tried to feed him, then he refused. She poured before, but he refused to eat it by himself. He wanted her to spoon feed him. But herein is where things get very interesting, because Amnon already know what his plot is, what his intentions are. So he sent every man out from him. And Amnon said unto Tamar, bring the meat into the chamber, that I may eat of thine hand. And Tamar took the cake which she had made and brought them into the chamber to Amnon, her brother. Prior, when she baked the cake, it was probably a servant that bring the cake to Amnon, but he refused to eat. Now he make a special request, have everybody leave, and he want Tamar into his chamber. And when she brought the cake to Amnon, her brother, and when she had brought them unto him to eat, he took hold of her and said unto her, come, lie with me, my sister. This story kind of remind me of one of the previous teaching I did on the story of Shechem and Dinah. It said that Shechem took Dinah, herein we see that Amnon, he asks Tamar for permission to lie with her, to lie with him. And she answered him, "Nay, my brother, do not force me, for no such thing ought to be done in Israel. Do not do this folly." When we see she is, you remember, he had all the men leave the room. That was kind of the same incident with Tamar and Shechem. What did the brothers say when they were being deceptive? They said, "Have all the men be circumcised," and just so they could carry out their diabolical plan. And we see that once he had Tamar all to himself in the chamber, then he's going to make reference like, "Come lie with me." And guess what? You hear those same words too in the story of Joseph and Potiphar's wife, when she wanted Joseph to lie with her in Genesis 39 and verse 7 to 12. Genesis 39, 7 to 12. "And it came to pass after these things," here we go again with "after these things, that his master wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, Lie with me. But he refused and said unto his master's wife, Behold, my master would not what is with me in the house, and he had committed all that he had into my hands. There is none greater in this house than I, neither had he kept back anything but thee, because thou art his wife. Or then can I do this great wickedness and sin against my God? It came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her, to lie by her or to be with her. It came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do the business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. So we see the similarity between Tamar and Amnon and Joseph and Potiphar's wife, that when they tried to carry out their sinister plan, it was when there was no one. So you have no witness, no evidence, no one to assist you. So they orchestrated this flawlessly. 12, and she caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. And we see also the same thing in Genesis 34 and verse 7, when it said, if you recall that, we see it said this thing ought not to be done. After Shechem had defiled Dinah, the brother, they were like, this thing ought not, when they wanted them to be circumcised. Genesis 34 verse 7, and the sons of Jacob came out the field, and when they heard it, and the men were grieved, and they were very wroth, because he had wrought folly in Israel in line with Jacob's daughter, which thing ought not to be done. And we see another example of that in Judges 19 and verse 23, stating that these things ought not to be done in Israel. It was like a taboo for something like that to be done in Israel. It was never done. So this is like new, something that they have never had an encounter or an experience with. Judges 19:23, and the man, the master of the house, went out unto them and said unto them, Nay, my brethren, nay, I pray you, do not so wickedly, seeing that this man is come into my house, do not this folly. If we take this approach, Tamar is trying to say, this approach that you're trying to take, if we take this approach, It's not going to look good for you nor me. And I, whither shall I cause my shame to go? And as for thee, thou, no, therefore I pray thee, be no. And I, whither shall I cause my shame to go? And as for thee, thou shalt be as one of the fools in Israel. Now therefore I pray thee, speak unto the king, for he will not withhold me from thee. Here we see that Tamar, she is trying to speak some senses into her brother Amnon, like, once you do this, like, whither shall I cause my shame to go? You do this folly to me, I will have shame. Once the shame is on me, like, where can I put the shame? It's not like I can put it behind me. Like, think rationally. Have you thought this entire thing through? But guess what? You are the crown prince. And if you do such thing which have never been done in Israel before, like, what do you think this is going to say about your character, your position as the crown prince? And you will bring shame to me, you will bring shame to yourself, but you will also bring shame to our father, the king, because you know what? We have some gossip fairy that they are sure going to let this known, and everyone is going to be aware of this situation. They're going to be familiar. They're going to be made aware of this incident that transpired. Tamar is trying to speak sense into his brother, like, you are not thinking rationally. You need to analyze this situation. Think about the outcome once you carry out your act. Think about the consequence. Think about your action before you actually execute it. And she is saying to him, like, you are like kind of speaking like one, you will be considered like a fool in Israel, because these things is God have done away with incestuous relationship. Like, she is just trying to make Amnon think rationally, or she's just trying to speak in an attempt to dissuade him from carrying out his folly, because this was forbidden by the law of Moses. And we know that it stated that you shall not uncover your sister nakedness. And she's saying all this stuff to Amnon, but it seemed that her words are falling onto deaf ears. Albeit he would not hearken unto her voice, but being stronger than she, forced her and lay with her. All that talking was for no reason, because we see that even what Tamar is saying makes sense. We see that Amnon is not thinking rationally, and her words seem to have fallen on deaf ears. Then Amnon hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred wherein he had hated her was greater than the love wherewith he had loved her. And Amnon said unto her, arise, you got to be kidding me. Earlier in verse 4, you were saying, or earlier in verse 1, you were saying that you loved her. And when you tell Jonadab, you are like, you blurted out, I love Tamar. But no, you hated her. And that's like a strong word to be using, because, and then it put the word exceedingly. So it's saying like, he didn't have just a small hatred towards her. It was like big hatred that he had towards her. And that's why initially I said, later on as we read and dissect these words, we're going to see that it was infatuation, it was lust, and not actual love that he had for his sister. And he hated her, and that hatred that he had for her was greater than the love that he initially thought he had for his sister. And Amnon said unto her, Arise, be gone. We see that lust, whether fulfilled or not, it can turn to hatred. And we see that in Genesis 39 and 13 to 19, and that is with Jacob, Joseph, and Potiphar's wife. When Joseph refused her that probably love that she thought, it was more like she was ashamed, because she keep begging Joseph daily to sleep with her, and he refused her, and now she have this shame. And we see that whatever she thought she had was love, we see that it turned into hatred. And what does the Bible say about love? And we will turn our attention to 1 Corinthians 13 and verse 8. 1 Corinthians 13 verse 8. Charity never faileth, but whether there be prophecy, they shall fail. Whether there be tongues, they shall cease. Whether there be knowledge, it shall vanish away. Basically, Paul is reminding us in Corinthians, everything, prophecy, it will fail. Everything else will fail. But guess what? Charity, which is in love, it will last forever. And when you hear that love will last forever, just think about God's way He loved us. In the beginning, when Adam and Eve disobeyed God and went against what God commanded, we see that God loved us so much that He sent His only begotten Son. And a lot of us, when it's your only child, like who is willing to give up their only child to save us, to have us being restored, when it was our fault, it was us who disobeyed God. But we see that even though Adam and Eve disobeyed God, that God always have more than one plan. He give us free will, free to make our choices. But in the midst of it, He had His plan A, plan B, plan all the way to Z. And that is the greatest love anyone can have. Greater love had no man than this, than for a man to lay down his life for his friend. And Jesus is like, know that we are in a relationship. Know that I died for you and restore you back to my Father. Now we can be restored if you do what I commanded you to do. Guess what? He's no longer calling you servant, but He's calling you friend. And that is the greatest love that we can have. And she said unto him, I'm now like, you did this act, you carry out your deed. Know that it is not what you initially thought it would be. Then no, you're forcing her out after you forced her, you raped her. Now you are, arise, be gone. Like the audacity of Amnon. And she said unto him, there is no cause. This evil in sending me away is greater than the other that thou didst unto me, but he would not hearken unto her. Tamar is trying to plead her cause. She's like, don't send me away. I'm already shameful of what you did to me, but you know what? Even what you did to me, although it's bad, guess what? Which is worse? You doing this deed, and then in the process of it, rejected me. You don't want me. No, you are sending me away. So the latter is greater than the first. But here again, we see Tamar is trying to speak sense into Amnon, but her plea is falling on deaf ears. Then he called his servant that minister unto him and said, put now this woman out from me and bolt the door after her. Prior you send them out, but I guess even if they hear Tamar screaming, they're not going to disobey their master, especially now he's the crown prince. And he called them, and imagine Tamar probably there crying, her clothes probably ripped, and she is hurting. And then he called his servant. Imagine the shame going through her mind that the servant, they're probably aware of what just transpired, what just take place. And then now he have the nerve to like get her out of here and then bolt the door. So even if she tried to think she can access and come back in, she won't have any access. And Tamar put ashes on her head and rent her garment of diverse color that was on her, and lay her hand on her head and went out crying. I can't even imagine the trauma that Tamar is going on at this, feeling at this moment. Oh, I skip 18. And she had a garment of diverse color upon her, for with such robes were the king's daughter that were virgin wearing. Then his servant brought her out and bolted the door after her. And Tamar put ashes on her head and rent her garment of diverse color that was on her, and laid her hand on her head and went out crying. Tamar, when she rented her garment, and the color of her garment of diverse color, that was to distinguish her as being a virgin, and know that Amnon raped her, her status of a virgin, she's no longer a virgin, and that is why she is in great despair, great agony, and she ripped her garment, she rent her garments of diverse color, and she laid ashes on her head and went on crying. Normally when you see the gesture of Tamar grief, mourning, vexation, and great distress, with the whole ordeal that just transpired, we see that in Job 2 and verse 9, when everything that happened in Job's life, Job did something similar by putting ashes on his head because he was in deep mourning. He had lost all his possession. He had lost his family. Everything that Job had owned, he had now lost everything. So Job was in great mourning. And verse 9, then said his wife unto him, doest thou still? I have the wrong verse written down. And when they had lifted up their eyes, verse 12, and when they had lifted up their eyes afar off and knew him not, they lifted up their voice and wept. And they rent every man his mantle. This is talking about Job's friend. When they came and see Job, and they see the state that Job was in, that they too, they come, they rent their garment, and they sprinkle dust upon their head toward heaven. Job is mourning, and his men are also mourning. And Tamar put ashes on her head. So Tamar is probably walking back to where she came from. She probably crying so loudly that everyone can hear her scream or crying. They're probably trying to figure out what happened to Tamar. And probably when Tamar ripped her garment, or she rent her garment, Tamar is basically saying, my status had changed from a virgin to I'm no longer a virgin. And this suggests the anguish. It also dramatically underscores her change of status from that of a virgin. And Tamar And Absalom, her brother, said unto her, Had Amnon thy brother been with thee, but hold not thy peace, my sister. He is thy brother, regard not this thing. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother's Absalom's house. Tamar is so ashamed that she stayed with her brother Absalom. And when we see the word here, desolate, it can be an adjective meaning deserted, lonely, or gloomy, or a verb meaning to devastate or forsaken. And Absalom, when King David heard of all these things, he was very wroth. Okay, David, you're mad, you're upset, but herein we don't see David take any action. He is upset about the situation, but he cannot do anything. And I think probably at this point, David was probably feeling powerless because of what happened in the previous chapter. Like, you're going to try and correct someone, but what you did prior, if David tried to correct Absalom, try to correct Amnon, like, it would seem like he is being like double standard because you just slept with Uriah's wife. And then in the process of you sleeping with Uriah's wife, you end up killing the man over his wife to cover your sin. If they're probably saying, if you do this, then like, who are you to talk to us? Who are you to like correct us? So David see all this stuff transpire, and because he have to live an exemplary lifestyle, or that one issue was not exemplary, then it's like he can't really say anything to his children because of the lifestyle prior. And it must have been hard. David must have felt powerless that there is the wrong that was being done to his daughter, and then the wrong was done not by a stranger but by her own brother. And that is what in chapter 12 it said, that your house, out of thine own house I will take thy wives and give them unto thy. So you remember earlier in verse 10 of chapter 12 that the Lord said, the sword shall not depart from thine house. And herein we see everything start to transpire because of what David did to Uriah. And Absalom spake unto his brother Amnon neither good nor bad, for Absalom hated Amnon because he had forced his sister Tamar. Absalom is like neutral. He is not saying anything. So Amnon is probably, he doesn't know like what is going on with Absalom. Like, did he put this incident behind him, or has he forgiven me? Is he mad? Like, he can't read between the lines. He cannot read what Absalom's feelings are because he is kind of acting neutral. And that's why Jesus tells us, like, you can't be, he said you have to be either hot or cold, but you can't be lukewarm. Pick a side. So herein, Absalom have a pick a side to let us know if he is mad, if he forget about the situation, like you don't really know how to read to get an idea of what his thought process are, because he's not showing it outwardly for you to like decide or see what he's actually thinking. And it came to pass after 2 full years that Absalom had sheep shearers in Baal-Hazor, which is beside Ephraim, and Absalom invited all the king's sons. And Absalom came to the king and said, Behold, now thy servant at sheep shearers, let the king, I beseech thee, and his servant go with thy servant. Absalom have 2 years to plot his revenge. And Absalom, to make it not look obvious, he's like, I will do my sheep shearing, have like a little feast, and I'm going to invite all the king's sons so they cannot see what my initial plan or my plot is going to be. But guess what? Absalom is not only mad with his brother, he is mad with David, his father, because David took no action to the injustice that was done to his daughter. Absalom is trying to take revenge, and not only his brother, but also the king. And the king said, and the king said unto Absalom, Nay, my son, let us not all now go, lest we be chargeable unto thee. And he pressed him, albeit he would not go, but blessed him. Amnon is probably thinking, if Absalom had some hatred towards me, it probably no water under the bridge, because now he shares sheep, he's having a feast, and he invited all the king's son. He didn't leave me out of it because of what I did. No, he invited everyone. So he's thinking everything is water under the bridge. I don't know if David was able to get what discernment, if the Spirit gave him discernment, that it probably had, they said to follow your conscience, or something was telling him, like, this doesn't sound like a good idea for everyone to leave. And he was saying, Nay, my son, let us not all go, lest we be chargeable unto thee. This is probably, if everyone you invited to the feast and we show up, this is probably going to be cost effective to you. I don't want to owe you anything. And David used that. It may seem like an excuse, but he was kind of thinking rationally, because what if David and all the king's son had went, that would give Absalom an edge. And David, he refused to go, but in the process, he gave them the okay for him to go and have this event. And Absalom pressed him that even though David blessed Absalom, then said Absalom, If not, I pray thee, let my brother Amnon go with us. And the king said unto him, Why should he go with thee? Oh, so earlier, I think when he said the king's son, I was under the assumption that Amnon was already in that number. But herein we go down further, we see that he asks his dad no for permission for Amnon to be part of this entourage, to be a part of this feast. And it would seem like herein Amnon is like the guest of honor, because he already invited all the king's son, but here he's making a special request to the king to have Amnon come to this celebration that he's having. And David is like, something sounds fishy, like, what is it why do you need Amnon? Because David probably under the mindset that there's still some animosity between Absalom and Amnon, which have been resolved. So David is like curious, and he's trying to get some more information out of Absalom to see why is it that you want your brother to come to this event. And it said Absalom keep pressing. He was persistent, and because he keep pressing, keep pressing David that he let Amnon and all the king's son go with him. So David finally agreed that you can have all the king's son along with Amnon to go with you to this event. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, Mark ye now, when Amnon's heart is merry with wine, and when I say unto you, smite Amnon, then kill him, fear not, hath not I commanded you, be courageous and be valiant. Absalom is giving specific guidance. The only person that I have a issue with, the only person I have to take vengeance again is Amnon. I'm giving you a command, you just need to execute. And being as he is telling his servant, and he is the prince, guess what? They're probably going to be too fearful to try and say no. They're going to say yes. And it came to pass and the servant of Absalom did unto Amnon as Absalom had commanded them. All the king's son arose, and every man got up upon his mule and fled. And it came to pass while they were in the way that tidings came to David, saying, Absalom had slain all the king's son, and there is not one of them left. Then the king arose and tore his garment and lay on the hearth, and all his servants stood by him with their clothes. News came to David that all the king's son died. David was probably thinking, oh man, this is what Nathan said when he said the sword shall not depart from your house. And when he heard the news, can you imagine? You have no one, like all your children, all of a sudden just pass away. You have no offspring to carry on your family name. And that was like a shocking news for David. And all of the servants, they were with David, and they stood by him and rent their clothes and was in mourning with David. But Jonadab, the son of Shema, David's brother, answered and said, really, you have the nerve after this is all because of your foolish counsel, and here you're still advising. He's like, let not my lord suppose that they have slain all the young men, the king's son, for Amnon only is dead. For by his appointment of Absalom, this had been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. You should have told the king up front that this was your splendid idea. This was the advice that you gave Amnon. This was your counsel, and because of your foolish and unwise counsel, no, the family is being in turmoil because of your foolish counsel. And he's like, oh, uncle, or probably King David, guess what? I have great news. It was just one of your sons. So that probably helped to ease this for David a little, because initially he thought, or he assumed he had lost all his son based on the news prior. But no, it's saying it was just Amnon. Now therefore let not my lord the king take the thing to his heart. Wow, really, Jonadab? To think that all the king's sons are dead, for Amnon only is dead. But Absalom had fled, and the young man that kept the watch lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, there came much people by the way of the hillside behind him. And Jonadab said unto the king, behold, the king's son come as thy servant said, so it is. Jonadab is saying, see, the information I provided you, it's correct, because now you see that all the king's sons are alive. And Absalom know that probably they're going to be, you probably think there's going to be some repercussion, that there's going to be something that David is going to do, especially when David was trying to pick into Absalom's plan. Like, why do you want Amnon to go with you? And he know probably because as a result of that, you kill the crown prince, you're probably going to be in trouble. So Absalom did the best thing he know to do. He ran away. And it came to pass, as soon as he had made an end of speaking, that behold, the king's son came and lifted up their voice and wept. And the king also and all his servants wept very sore. But Absalom fled and went to Talmai, the son of Amnon, king of Geshur, and David mourned for his son every day. Here we see that Absalom went back to his mother family when he fled. And David, like, whatever happened, he still, as a father, he's still mourning for his son that had fled. He already lose one son, like, he's thinking like, I can't lose another son. And this kind of reminds us that of the prodigal son in Luke 15, that although the prodigal son, he left, but when he came back, his father welcomed him with open arms. Or when the shepherd leave the 99 sheep to just go and find that one sheep that was missing. This paint basically the same scene as Jesus with us, because he said there's joy in the presence over one sinner that came to repentance than 99 just person. And we see that David's love for his children, despite their fault, often clouded his good judgment. And David yearning to see Absalom, it set the stage to what transpired in chapter 14, the rebellion, when Absalom returned. And the soul of King David longed to go forth unto Absalom, for he was comforted concerning Amnon, seeing that he was dead. Absalom, when he ran away, he spent 3 years with his great-grandfather, because he thinking 3 years will give David enough time to mourn the loss of his son Amnon, and probably will forgive him when he returns. And Tamar's story is painful, but it reminds us that God cares for those who have been hurt. He is the God of justice, healing, and restoration. If you are carrying wounds, bring them to him. He will heal, restore, and bring justice. I hope that you find healing, hope, assurance, encouragement, and strength in these words. Guess what? Remember that God's word stands forever and that he loves you with an everlasting love. Stay blessed. Until next time.